Hello, Allie.
Hello, Melissa, and we are back again in Liverpool, USA, which is a best friends podcast because we are best friends. And today we are talking about writing and poetry because it's been a million years since we wrote. And um, today we're gonna come back from that writing slump.
Yeah, and we've given each other a prompt, which I think was a genius idea, and I'm really happy that we did it. And it was the vague prompt was summer, and then we each gave each other a word that we had to use in our writing, and we both wrote poems this time. So,
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, if I can do this when I'm like forcing myself and kind of like doing it in between other things or like kind of, just doing it on my phone instead of whatever, right? Then like, what would I be able to write if I like made space and time to like
right.
really actively do it? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like if I scheduled 2 hours every week and like made myself write, what would I get out of it?
Oh my
Probably
gosh.
something better than this.
Yeah.
And yet will I? don't know. But just that was something that I was thinking a lot about while I was writing this is like because I was really writing it like I wrote it on my phone like at work. And I was like, okay, imagine if I like could actually fully focus on this.
Yeah.
Or like imagine if I could fully like go back and edit this for like 2 months. Which I suppose I can, but
I
like,
think, well, I do think because like what I got is definitely a draft. I'm like, this is not a final product. I'm gonna bring it here
yeah,
and we can like workshop it live, or I could just at least put it out here and then like share
yeah,
thoughts. And because this is what I have today is definitely a draft. I would not call it like a
I would agree.
final.
No, I would agree. That's how
Yeah.
mine feels too. That's and we kind of talked about the reason this would be a fun thing to do for the podcast is then we can we used to in the very beginning of our friendship we were in a poetry class together and we would specifically every time pair up together. I remember one time they like made us not be like in a pair and we were like why?
Yeah, like
Um
obviously this is how we work well together.
Yeah, but we would like edit each other's poems or like workshop or like, bounce ideas off and like things like that. And that's some of the best poetry that I've written, you know. And so it would be fun to like yeah. So I definitely do not feel like this is a final finished product. And maybe I would like to make some edits to it, but yeah, I was just thinking a lot about, what I could get done if I actually like made this a habit and a routine instead of just like trying to write something.
Yeah, 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 that would be great. But it just comes back around again, and I won't like go too much off on this because it's like definitely a digression, but that just comes back again to like me personally. I have so many creative hobbies
Yeah,
that I have to like, yeah, it's like I have to pick and choose sometimes. But I'm kind of learning that that's the way it is. It's like, oh, you know what? If for a little bit in my life for like a few months or whatever, I'm just really mostly into writing poetry, then I'll focus on that, and then like last year
yeah,
when I was doing some markets, it was a really good time for me to focus on drawing, and then it's like all a big cycle, that just like goes around, and
yeah.
that's just
Which
kind
I
of the
think is
way.
very healthy.
Yeah.
Even I think it is like important to keep things like fresh a little bit and keep like you know keep ideas rolling and I do feel like one thing that is a positive feeling that I will talk about I guess is that I do feel like I went so long since I've written anything creatively that I had a lot of stuff stored up,
Oh,
you know?
uh-huh. Yeah,
Like
I
I didn't
found
use all my good
myself
ideas.
I found myself wishing that I was like multiple times wishing that I was writing um a poem or any writing, but like in this case I guess specifically a poem about like so many other different things.
Yeah,
And
which
I'm
you
like,
could.
no, right now I need to do this one. This is our prompt and I need to do this one. Like I have stuff
Yeah.
in here, I have ideas for this one. But yeah, I found myself being like, "Oh my gosh, I have something inside of me and I feel like I want to write poems about it, but like not this one, like it needs to be a different one." So,
Yeah, which is good. I
yeah.
do feel like I often feel that way when I start writing because it's like once I get into writing, I'm like, oh, I know how to write, and I could write like a million things back to back to back, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Poetry is
yeah,
difficult for me because, and I think this is the last thing I'll say before I make one of us read ours.
yeah,
Um, but poetry can be really difficult for me because I really need to get over my worry about being cringe. Like,
yeah,
I need to let go of that, shyness and that like hesitancy because I'm too afraid to sound cringy or whatever. It's like, who cares, you have to take
yeah,
that chance anyway. Because I feel
yeah,
like I'm just too judgmental and it's like I just need to freaking relax a little bit, just like be if it's cringe, that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But I
yeah.
just have um that like worry for some reason that like
I get that.
it has to be good, but then that's so
Yeah,
subjective when it comes to poetry. So
I think that's so
yeah.
true. Yeah, I mean, I definitely also feel that, and I think that's one of the things I like about us coming together to share poetry is that one, I think both of us can be honest enough with each other that like, obviously I would never be like, "Oh, that's bad. I hate your poem." But like,
Yeah.
like I it would be an honest enough space that we could be like, "Oh, I don't think this quite works," or like, "Oh, maybe
Mhm.
this is a little cliche or something." But then also like I know you're going to see all the good parts of my poem. You know what I mean? And I know I'm going
Yeah.
to see all the good parts of yours, even if it's not like a, 100% like hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's gonna be good parts and there's gonna be things that we like about each other's writing, and that's like the fun part about poetry.
Yeah.
So, anyways, do you want to read first or do you want me to read first?
I I think I want you to read first. Are you
Okay,
comfortable with that?
yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Okay. Do you
So the
Oh,
word that you gave me
yes.
is green. So we said summer, you said green. Honestly, that did not give me that much.
Oh no, I know, I was like, how specific should it be? And sometimes, and I've been doing this a lot more recently in my life, like, where do you want to eat for dinner? If people ask me a question and I just like panic because I do that and I think way too hard about literally everything ever.
Yeah,
And so more recently I've just been going with literally the first thing that pops into my head.
yeah,
And
which
that was
you
green for
know,
me. And I thought about it longer and I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, maybe it should be more specific. Maybe it should be like this or that. And I'm like, nope, that's it. It's the first word that
no,
popped
and
into my
it's
head.
fine
Yeah.
because I think that it was actually like good because it gave me enough freedom to like kind of write about whatever. I mean,
Mm
green can
hmm.
go in any poem,
Mm hmm.
whatever. It gave me a couple of different things. I did want to kind of talk about a couple of things I thought about but didn't write about. One, the first thing that came to my mind when I saw the word green is like envy, like green with envy.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, what can I write about?" Like that's fun. That's like a very like vivid like I don't know, thing to write about. So I thought about that. Um and I also thought about like um water that's like so blue it's like green.
Hmm.
And I was like, "Okay, that's kind of more cuz envy I was like, "Okay, that's not summery. Like that doesn't really um but water I was like, "Okay, that could be like the ocean or something." It's obviously way more blue than green, but thinking I could maybe do something with that. And then obviously like the most on the nose thing to write about with green is like plants, like trees or
Yeah.
whatever. So that is sort of what my poem uses green for. So without further ado, I suppose I will read my poem. Do you want me to like send the text to you or just read
Yeah,
it?
go ahead. You can put it like in the Discord group chat, and you could do it after or before, whatever.
Okay, so I have just sent it to you,
Okay.
and now I will read. And the formatting is and like the capitalization and punctuation is the thing that I've done nothing with.
Okay.
So that's the only caveat I will give. Okay, this poem is called Oregon Wildfires Would Have Killed Them Anyways. Green fades to brown, and I know summer is almost over. And I am glad. In the summer, we pick the wildflowers. They have green stems and pink buds, and we try not to let them die. Plants grow so slowly that they don't realize when they have been picked, plucked out, and are dying. We trick them with plant food, sugar to make them look and feel and breathe as if they are still alive. It feels sad to keep bodies dead and bright. So when the green fades to brown and I know summer is almost over, I am glad.
Topical.
Yeah.
It's
What can I
funny
say?
because on Sunday, Justin and I went to Savi Island to do like U pick, which was also when the air quality was probably the worst, but it was fine. Um, which are both things that like are very relevant to your poem. But we did U
Yeah.
pick flowers, and they're
Aw.
like down in our living room right now, and they're very pretty. But yeah. Anyway, that's just like what that made me think of, because it's funny that it's like relevant to your poem. There are
Yeah.
things in this that I am like really into, and some concepts that I'm like it makes me want more. I'm like, "Ooh, I feel like this could use some more details and be like really killer." Um
Yeah.
yeah, and there's some concept. I don't think that there's any part of it that I don't like.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um
Yeah, I do kind of feel like I want it to be longer
mhm.
or like maybe have like a second like stanza or something. But yeah, I was just struggling to figure out like what else to say, but I feel like there is more to say. I kind of like agree, I think.
Yeah, I feel like in between some lines, there's possibility for, for stuff to be in there for the flow to kind of go a little bit more smoothly, like you've left
Mhm.
spaces for more things to be added in there. Um,
Definitely.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What what does it like I don't know. I guess there is sort of like a second meaning that I read
Mhm.
it to Abe earlier and he I don't know, not that he didn't get it, but I just don't know if it was like conveyed and I changed a couple of things to
Mhm.
try to make it like a little bit more on the nose what the like second layer is, but I don't know that it was like successful still.
I think that is something that I was thinking and am now like thinking again as you say it and as you read it, is that I could tell that there's something else in here, but I could not tell you what it is. So I think that you
Okay.
could make it a little bit more obvious or a little bit more on the nose, and it wouldn't be too transparent.
Okay. Cuz
Yeah.
yeah, I think so like the idea that I was trying to go with is sort of that like I am the flower. Like I am feeling
Mm.
like
Mhm.
picked and dead but not realizing that I'm dead yet because summer is
Yeah.
so oppressive.
Okay. Yeah. And you put yourself, you did I in here like literally twice, I think, and it's the same line.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I get where you're going with that. And I think that you could put a little bit more of a personal like I in there, and it wouldn't be too much, and it would maybe like make that come through a little bit more if that was something that you wanted to be a little bit more obvious, because like like we were saying, poetry can be so
Like subjective.
yeah, subjective. I'm so tired, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. That can
Dude,
be
yeah.
so
I know.
subjective. So like if you're like, no, I want it to be vague enough that it could be interpreted in different ways, then like that's more of where it is. But if you're like, no, I want this to be a little bit more obvious, then yeah, totally, I would
Yeah.
encourage that. Yeah.
Okay.
And I like
Yeah.
that you're uh title is like um it's its own thing.
Yeah, I kind of do that with like all my titles.
Mhm.
Um, I would say I'm very inspired by Fallout.
Uh, yeah, I get I get
um,
what you mean. Yeah.
yeah,
But
but
then
no, I
it's
love to
also
do a
like,
little.
well, then how does that relate to how this is supposed to be reflective of you? You know, like
Um,
what does that represent? You know, like what do the which, you know, is just something just a question, just like thinking out loud.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, good notes. I'm definitely like writing some of
Okay.
it down, and I'm gonna go back and like think about some of that
Yeah.
because I do. Yeah, I do feel like there's like something there, but it just is like
Mhm.
not quite
I think mine
all
is in a
together.
really similar place. So I'm do you want to ruminate on yours a little bit longer or do you want to jump to mine and then
I'm happy to jump to yours.
okay.
Yeah, I feel good about my notes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think for now that's all I can really think of. So
Yeah.
I will okay, so mine I'll copy it. I'll see if it formats in the chat when I paste it in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Okay, cool. Hopefully it keeps its format when I send it to you. So mine is also definitely in a draft mode. I have not read it out loud once. So
Mm.
we'll see how I do reading it out loud for the first time. For some reason, I was very, very hesitant to. I had Justin read it, and the one thing I said is, please don't read it out loud. And when I had
Oh
him
my
read
god.
it, and so for whatever reason, I just like was not ready for this to be spoken yet. So I will do that now. But yeah, because I remember someone saying once, you know, in our poetry class in England that, you know, poetry is meant to be spoken out loud. Which I
I
think
think
is,
so.
you know, I get why people say that. So maybe that's another way to I don't know. But so this has not been spoken out loud. But okay.
What word did I give you also
You
before we
okay?
start?
Oh yeah, no, thank you. The word that you gave me was sunburn, which honestly I like was not very happy about. I was like,
You didn't
oh,
like
that's
that
not
word?
poetic. Yeah.
What?
But no, it was fine. I actually ended up getting that was just my first my first reaction to it. But then when I started ruminating on it, I started to get some things from it that I'm like, okay, I see now. I see. I get it. Um, but yeah, initially I was like, oh, sunburn. Like I just wouldn't have guessed that, I guess. I don't know. It seemed
Yeah.
like yeah, but which made it, you know, interesting. So in the end, I
Good.
think it was a good yeah. Okay, so this mine doesn't really have a title, so I've just been calling it it's a summer poem for now.
Yeah. That
And
works.
yeah, during summer vacations in grade school, my friends and I would spend the day riding our bicycles around the neighborhood, standing barefoot on the blacktop, enduring the burning as long as we could. There was always aloe vera for the sunburns, cartoons to watch in an air conditioned living room, and root beer floats to drink almost every Wednesday. Now, smoke turns the sun red on the horizon as I drive to work on weekdays because summers aren't breaks anymore and I'm old enough to pay the electric bill. I still remember those young desert summers when I hear the sounds of crickets in the evening. I think of warm night skies filled with stars, like the freckles on my shoulders left over from days in the sun.
Okay. Yours. It's very it makes me nostalgic and it's like about your child.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like
I should
it.
have like a thing up to like kind of like take notes too. I have so many I don't delete anything when I write.
Yeah.
So I
I do the
just
same thing.
have like way too many unused words and lines and yeah. So I was starting to go in so many different directions with this and I
Mhm.
ended up putting down, you know, obviously just like a bunch of stuff. And I tried to make it have somewhat of a flow. But I'm like, to me this is not
Yeah.
done, but I would really like to know some of what you're thinking about it.
So I like that there are like I think your structure is really good.
Oh,
Like I
thank
like the
you.
structure a lot. Like the stanzas are really good and like even like I was looking like in the first stanza the like neighborhood and could like near rhyme or I guess that's a rhyme, I don't know. But it's like it that like kind of has a very nice cadence. Um and I don't know, you have like a couple of other like kind of fun poetic like I guess devices. Like there's a little bit of like alliteration like at the end and I don't know. Like it's not anything like too like I'm doing a
Mm-hmm.
metaphor now, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's enough that it's like it's well crafted. And so I do really appreciate that about the structure. Um
Yeah, a lot
and I
of
like
that happens, like alliteration and rhyming and stuff. A lot, if not most, if not all, of that
mhm.
happens just like by accident when I'm writing, and I'm like, "Ooh, that's good." Okay,
Yeah, no, that's
which is
great.
like,
I mean, I
yeah,
think
yeah,
I think you have to kind of like write enough that you get some stuff like that and then you're like, "Oh yeah, that's what I'll keep
uh
because
huh,
it like works out," you
exactly,
know?
yeah, yeah. But anyway, yeah, keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, so I liked that. One specific thing that I liked the most out of the poem beside like that's like actually specific like word choice is when you said like the air conditioned living room and then like old enough to pay the electric bill. That like sort of reflection of like being a kid and just like being in the air conditioning and just drinking root beer floats and watching cartoons and just having no idea how much it costs to like air condition your house in the summer.
Yeah,
you know I think that was like really like that's the best like exemplifier of like summer as a kid versus summer as an adult. Which I think is what you're trying to do here, right? Is
yeah.
like
I am so happy that you picked up on that specific thing because I like I tried to do that.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm like that specific thing. I'm so happy that you picked up on that because I did that and I was like, "Ooh, I like that." So that makes me really
yeah,
happy that you like
yeah.
that.
I really liked that you did that. I think the only like maybe suggestion that I have is changing some of like the specific like vocabulary to be I don't know. I don't even know what I'm like trying to say, I guess. But like
Mhm.
it feels a little bit like more of a narrative. I guess this isn't necessarily like a bad thing. It's just like a something that maybe to me doesn't like read as much as a poem. It feels very like narrative and like it feels like you're writing in full sentences. Um in a way that takes me out of like it being a poem just a little bit. And maybe that's fine because poems do that sometimes.
Yeah, I
And you
was
do still have
reading other poems to try to get inspiration and this format came a little bit from I don't remember who it was, but there was a specific poem called Moths, and I don't remember who it was by. I was just looking up like random poems about summer, and it was a little bit like that in terms of that it was
mm,
more like full sentences a little bit. Um
yeah.
and so I went with that partly because I got inspiration from that other poem, but also because when I was writing this, I was having so much trouble with how fragmented should these thoughts be and how full sentence ish should they be. And I was having so much trouble that I'm like, well, the easiest thing to do is to just say it in a sentence
Yeah.
and like spell it out like that. And so that could totally be something that could change because really it was just like I was having so much trouble making it different than this than so that's just like what it ended up becoming.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't think it's necessarily like a bad thing. I think the
Mhm.
only thing it does that sometimes is maybe something that I would consider changing is just that it makes me feel a little bit like I'm reading paragraphs instead of like a poem. But again, that's like not necessarily a bad thing. Like that's. poems can be in full sentences. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
like fragmented.
Yeah, another
Um,
subjective.
yeah, totally,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the other question I have is sort of like how much do you want this to be like something that anybody who grew up in the suburbs can read and relate to, and how much do you want it to be about you?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Um, that's a good question because I when I was I think that when I was writing it, I was thinking more about me than about it being relatable. Um, and or it, kind of in a way where it's like it's about me, so I did want to have some specific snapshots that maybe weren't necessarily because, like for example, I almost talked about in a different way. I almost talked about lemonade instead of root beer because I knew that lemonade is a more that's more like stereotypical summer beverage experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like my specific experience when I was a child is I have summer experiences of root beer floats. And
Mm-hmm.
so I guess to answer your question is I did want it to be more about me, but at the same time I still wanted it to have a feeling that was
Yeah.
relatable, but maybe not like every specific sentence has to be like, "Oh my gosh, I know exactly like what that's like," if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because I definitely, my feeling when I read this is that it is a very like, I don't know, it's very like classic, like American suburbs summer versus classic American adult. Like, the things that you're talking about are like, playing outside and, getting sunburned and being in the, watching cartoons and then having to pay the electric bills and working, which is like, I think that's like the quintessential, like, I'm an adult, so I have to like pay bills and work. And I'm a kid, so I get to play outside and like,
Mhm.
you know. So I do feel like it maybe could benefit from being more like specific to you,
Okay.
just so that it makes me feel like I'm taking a peek into your brain rather than just like, yeah. But
Yeah.
again, I feel like that's also so subjective because I also like what you've done in making it, like, I mean, I commented on the fact that I really like the like really good classic juxtaposition of like being an adult versus being a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like maybe I could name like a specific cartoon or like a specific street name or something and
Yes.
yeah, that would make
I
it
think
just a little
that's
bit
I think
yeah.
that's what I'm definitely like inching towards is
Mhm.
just I was even thinking like when you say like my friends and I would spend the day like riding our bicycles, I even think including like a name instead of my friends and saying like, this person and I would ride our bikes around or whatever. Maybe just makes it just a touch more like individualized and a bit more like, oh, I wonder who that is, or like
Mhm.
it kind of makes you picture like even if the person reading it has no idea who that person is, or even if that person is made up, it kind of gives more of a character feel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. I like that idea. There were a couple things in here that I even almost made um like like made up. I almost went with like a totally made up summer snapshot
Yeah.
picture that like represented certain feelings. But I was like, no, I kind of I want it to be specific to my experience. I want to say things that are, you know, like actual memories that I have and not just like make up a
Yeah.
generic, like generic summer poem experience. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I really like is standing barefoot on the blacktop enduring the burning. Like, as long, I feel like that is so like that is exactly what I mean with like being more specific, because it's that is something that lots of kids have done for sure, but it does feel like it's a bit more like specific to you, and like maybe represents something like a little bit more like, I don't know, yeah, just more like of you than
Yeah.
just like, oh yeah, this, we rode our bikes, or like,
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Yeah, those were specific, or not necessarily like those lines exactly, but that was a specific line that I had for a long time. Like there were a couple lines that just existed, from like the first day that
Yeah.
you know just kind of had to make it into the poem because I felt like it was kind of niche. I'm like, yeah, sure, probably other kids did that, but I've never. It felt pretty
Yeah.
niche, but it also felt
Yeah.
pretty. I don't know, like if you just think about the action of a child, when you're a child standing on the really hot street in bare feet because it hurts, who knows why you're doing it, but you're doing it for some reason. And it's like I would never have thought that that would have been poetic when I was a
It
child.
is,
It's
because
just
that's
like,
like
yeah,
truly some kid shit. Like kids do that,
yeah,
And I do think that's like exactly and specifically it's something that an adult like wouldn't do,
yes, yeah,
you know.
yeah,
And so I think I like that a lot, specifically because of that, because I do feel like maybe you could buy in a little bit more to the like that like juxtaposition, because I think that's like the definitely the strongest piece of the poem is like that comparison of like adult summer versus kid summer, which I know is kind of the whole point of the poem, but I think it's done well, and like it is a strong theme to use.
yeah, 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 and oh my gosh, what was I gonna say? Oh, and I also thought that there was something in it that was very like when you were a kid standing on this hot street, you're like a little bit in pain probably, you're enduring in this feeling for fun. You're
Yeah.
like, how long can
Yeah.
we do this? It's a game. But then like when you're an adult and I'm like at work, I didn't put this in the poem, but I could. I couldn't get away for it to fit nice. Now I go to work in a non-air conditioned warehouse and it's miserable. There's nothing fun about
Yeah.
this. I'm not enduring this heat for anything more than like I have to make the money to pay the electric bill type of thing.
Right.
Like I don't do stuff like that. I don't like do things that like hurt on purpose for any kind of game or pleasure anymore. Like I don't, like it's not,
Yeah.
there's I don't know, there's something about that, it's just like it's not how it
Yeah.
works anymore now that I'm an adult and I do adult things.
Yeah, no, and I think that's strong, because that like everyone knows that feeling of like being a kid and being like just kind of stupid and being just
Yeah.
kind of like, I don't know, what if we like did this dumb thing? And that's like the magic of being a kid, is you just like do something dumb, and it's just dumb, and you
Yeah.
don't have to care that it's dumb
Yeah.
because you're a kid,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I also was really trying, like, oh, I did have one little thing that I wanted to question you on because, which was the ending, because I really wanted to bring it back to, I wanted to, like, mix the past and the present in a way to kind of show, like, the
Yeah.
nostalgia about it. I also really wanted to, which I don't think really happened, which is okay, but I was really trying to find a way to wrap it up in a not entirely negative way because I didn't want it to just be like, oh, summers as a kid were good and summers as an adult suck. Like, I didn't want it to be that black and white,
Yeah.
And I was literally trying to think, I'm like, what are good things about the summer now that I'm an adult? Because I dislike the summer so much, so I'm like,
Yeah.
what are the good things? So yeah, but what do you have any thoughts or constructive criticisms about like the end specifically? Because I feel like I struggled with the end
You know,
specifically.
like the end. I think the end is I like what you said about wanting to like mix the past and present together at the end. I think that is strong. Like a strong sort of goal to do at the end. Um One thing that I specifically try not to do when I'm writing poetry is like tie the end up with a bow. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'm not very successful with that. But I kind of it's I don't know, it's sort of my like not I don't know. I don't hate it when other people do it. It's just like something that I think about is I'm like, oh, I can't like just basically say and all was okay the end, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Like I just kind of don't like to do that. And so I try really hard when I'm writing poetry not to like have like a punchline or like have like a like I don't know, like moral of the story is kind of line. But that's hard to do. And I don't even think that you've like really gone either way. Like it doesn't feel abrupt, but it also doesn't feel like it's like um all tied up in a bow. But I guess that's like my one thought about the endings of poems is that's like the one thing that I try not to do. And I
Mm-hmm.
do feel like this, you know, doesn't like fully offend, but maybe almost is like a little too like perfect at the end, if that makes sense. Like it's a little too like it says what I'm expecting it to say, I guess.
Mm.
It's like, oh, if the beginning of the poem is about you being a kid and then the middle of the poem is about you being an adult, then like the end of the poem will be about how you like look fondly back.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I feel like maybe just like putting more specifics. Maybe that's I think that's what I'm getting
Mm.
at. I'm like thinking live through it, sorry.
Yeah,
But
no,
like
that's okay.
yeah, I think at the end if you had more specifics so that it felt less like a like and the moral of the story is or like the life lesson we learned from the end of the poem is
Okay. I think
because
that,
like warm
yeah,
nights filled with stars feels very like
yeah.
that's like what summer night is, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
like maybe if it was like a bit more specific. I like the very ending, like the freckles on my shoulders left over from days in the sun. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like that is strong because
Okay.
that I think that more stuff like that would be stronger because it does what you were saying you wanted the end to do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so. The very last couple things that you said make sense.
Sorry,
No,
it
that's
was rough
okay.
in the middle. I was talking and thinking at the same time, which is
Yeah,
never
yeah. I
good.
was like, I'm just gonna let her keep going because she's gonna make sense sometimes. So I'm gonna just go wait. But yeah,
Ah,
yes, yeah. I think that that is like an answer that I wanted, an answer that makes sense that I can think about.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I feel like we both did our homework and we both came up with something that like neither of us flopped. So I'm feeling good about that.
Yeah, good. Yes, I feel the same. I was so nervous. I'm like, I don't even know, but I feel a lot better now after getting it out there and reading through it and thinking about it more and pulling it apart cuz it's so poetry is so can be so vulnerable. It feels like as an art to like have that out there cuz it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know. And maybe I'm just too judgmental. I just need to loosen up a little
Yeah, I mean, I do think
bit.
it's like ego is so tight because I
Yeah.
mean, poetry has a reputation for being like pretentious or like,
Mhm.
oh, everybody's trying to like say something so deep
Mhm.
in their poetry, and it's like, what if I just like literally write a poem about a flower?
Yeah. And if
You
it's
know?
just about the flower, it doesn't have to be about anything else.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
like, yeah, it doesn't have to be like the best thing you've ever read. It's
Mhm.
just like the art of writing is an art in itself,
Mhm.
not just like the final product.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I feel like it's not a bad thing to strive for, but I have a unfortunate thing when I write poetry is I want it to have more than one meaning, like every time. Like, how do I? Because it's a method in storytelling that is something that could be really important, like in a fiction story, for example, is
Mm-hmm.
usually, especially if it's like a really well written story, usually a problem that's being like an immediate problem that's being shown to you on the page is not the real problem. Like there's always something else happening. I
Right.
don't know. Like that I'm not explaining that good, but like, you know,
Oh, I get it though.
yeah, yeah. So I because of like my studies and because of what I know about writing and my own I guess it's ego, I don't know, about stuff is like I always want it to be like that. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be, but I do like to do that. So, I don't know. There's juxtaposition in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think this was like definitely, yeah, a good start for both of us, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that we both brought stuff that we could talk about
Mhm.
and talk about the successes and the things that we want to work on with each of these and be open to talking about that with each other. That's something that I find very special about our friendship. There are not a lot of friends that I would let critique my
Yes,
writing.
yes. That is, yeah, that's very true. Yeah, and I think that like we could give ourselves a little while and edit these and maybe do like a handful or two, I don't know. Some amount of other recordings in between and then maybe be like, "Oh, let's come back to this. Like let's, take some time
Um,
and then maybe come back at some point and do it on something else." Yeah.
yeah, I would love to. I liked this idea. I would love to do this idea
Yes.
again where we give ourselves some kind of prompt and then come
Mhm.
back and talk about it.
For sure.
Because it did hold me accountable to like actually do something.
Mhm.
And it was really helpful to get your input on my writing. And that's
Yeah.
something that I've missed in the last couple of years. So we haven't really done that in a
Yes.
while.
Yes.
So yeah, this was lovely and we will definitely be doing it again. And I will be editing my poem and maybe I'll even be so brave and put it on my website.
I might wait until like I edit it and then we meet up again.
Yeah,
Talk
yeah,
about
yeah.
it again.
That's what
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah, I
But
know it's been a stat amount of time since anything's gone on the website, but I still put them
yeah.
in the descriptions of our videos just in case.
Just in case.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, until next time, I love you.
I love you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. And goodbye.
Bye.